please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Macro top economists met Prime Minister Modi at the Niti Aayog. A 7-member committee apparently has made a series of recommendations. What were the key ones? We are joined by Dr. M. Govinda Rao, former member of the PMEAC. Dr. Rao, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. What were the key recommendations, sir?
Good morning to you. It was not a 7-member committee, it was a group.
Okay.
See, there were almost something like this 40, 45 people. And they were divided into 6 different groups. And each group was, had a specific theme.
Okay.
There was one, the first group was on macro balances. And the second one was on agriculture. The third one was on employment. And then there was one on urban infrastructure. And, related issues.
Okay.
One on health and education.
Okay.
So these are the 6 groups, and out of that, so these 45 people who had assembled were divided into these groups.
Okay.
And the first group was on macro balances, as I mentioned. It had consisted of 7 people, and then there was broad unanimity on the way in which the government should deal with the macro issues.
Okay, so if you could just tell us the key recommendations that were given to the Prime Minister.
The most important recommendation in my view is that the government should stick to the fiscal deficit target. And there has to be credibility in the government budgeting. In the sense that, one of the things that one could do is to have a fiscal council appointed. A fiscal council appointed by the parliament and reported to the parliament, not to the finance ministry, as was in the encasing committee recommendation. And then, of course, the issues of significant revenues can be mobilized through disinvestment.
Sure. Mr. Rao?
Yeah.
Anything on taxes?
Yes, on the taxation front, you were telling my colleague Shireen last night that the group has recommended imposing long-term capital gains. I just wanted to understand the rationale behind that, because the common opinion suggests that if the government is looking at revenue optimization, then there are other methods to do that and not do a tax on long-term capital gains. And, at a time when the global economies like the US, etc., are bringing down tax rates, at such a time, it doesn't look like it would be favorable for India to tax long-term capital gains. Your own view on what the group suggested and the rationale behind that?
Yeah. Now, there are 2 parts to it. First, one is that, the world is bringing down the tax rates. And obviously, we said that, the government should implement the announcement made in 2015-16 budget that tax preferences would be rationalized and that, corporate tax rate would be brought down to 25%. So we are on that. And on the other issue, on the long-term capital gains, my theory tells me that the objective of tax policy is to raise revenues. It is not supposed to do seek 100 other objectives. And, trying to influence the investor's choice between different financial assets is not one of them.
Okay.
You have financial assets. And why should the tax policy bring about a wedge and then, influence the, investor's choice between long-term capital gains in debt and equity-related issues?
Okay. So broadly,
if you're taxing debt, why are you not taxing equity?
Okay. So what was the
neutrality? There has to be neutrality in taxation.
Point taken, sir. But that was one key recommendation to impose tax on LTs.
So obviously, in fact, we have been doing too much of distortions by taxing some financial instruments and not taxing others. Is it the objective of tax policy to influence the investor's decisions on tax, what instrument you should buy? I think we should be rational.
Okay.
And, my theory tells me that that is not the objective, and therefore we said that, it is not the question of equity.
Sure.
Through tax
Mr. Rao,
policy, you cannot... It is not through tax policy you can't bring about much of an equity, because income taxes only 2.5% of the population pays income tax. What equity are we talking about?
Sure. Mr. Rao, I also wanted to ask you if there was any discussion on the STT, security transaction tax, and whether that would be, would be brought down if the holding period on LTCG is made 2 years instead of 1?
In a short time that we had, we did not discuss that issue.
Okay.
So there was no reference to that particular thing.
Sure. But Mr. Govinda Rao, good morning. But, if we have STT, then there should not be LTCG. Or if we have LTCG, then STT should be done away with. We can't have both, right?
Obviously. I'm not on the you see, the question is, here is a very glaring issue. And there are many other things that, many other, infirmities that we have in the tax policy, because tax policy cannot be pursuing 100 objectives. You see, the objective tax policy should be to raise revenue. And of course, some amount of equity, you need to really have some, it should be equitable. It should not, you can't raise revenue from the poor man. But at the same time, if you say that, more the number of objectives you have, more the, sort of distortions you try to create.
Okay.
And more avenues you create for avenues you create for evasion and avoidance of the tax.
Okay. So, just to wind up this discussion, can we say the key takeaways were maintain fiscal discipline, 2, look at taxing long-term capital gains on shares, and any
most
other?
Important is that this is restoring the credibility of the budget.
All right. Fair enough.
When you overestimate revenues and underestimate expenditures, and it creates a huge problem not only for the center but also for the states.
Fair enough.
Okay.
And therefore, it is important to have, and that is the reason why we set a fiscal council, because that would bring about a certain amount of checks and balances in the forecasting methodology and monitor the fiscal deficit of the center.
Okay.